Hi, this is Ross with the Hurlbut Academy, and today we're taking a look at the cinematography of this year's smash hit, Joker. The look and feel of Joker was based on the filmmaker's personal experiences of New York City in the 1970s and 80s. This became the basis for their version of Gotham City. New York in the 80s was a world that had completely lost control. Drugs were rife, there was an overwhelming level of homelessness, garbage, and graffiti. Crime and corruption prevailed. A city like this makes it perfectly believable for someone like Arthur Fleck to be chewed up and spit out as Joker. We're entering a Gotham not unlike Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight, and a young Joker who could easily bloom into the deliciously sadistic, unstoppable force that was Heath Ledger's performance. So much has been made of the cultural references to movies of that time period as well. Movies like Taxi Driver, Serpico, and King of Comedy have received a nod in the look of Joker. DP Lawrence Sher says, "I went back and watched a couple of movies Todd and I were referencing, thinking that they were going to really give us this template for Joker's look, such as contrast, color, saturation, or even some lighting references. Every time I went and watched them, however, it was the memory of the movie I was looking for, not necessarily the look of the movie itself." With everything being set in 1981, Todd Phillips wanted to originally shoot on film, with DP Sher remarking, "We wanted to shoot 65mm from the start, and we were strongly dissuaded from doing that because of budget. We thought this would be a great movie to shoot large format because of the shallow depth of field and the resulting intimacy, but the truth is the cameras are really hard to find, and it was more expensive." The move to digital allowed for more takes and for Joaquin Phoenix's improvisational style of acting. He goes on to say, "Interestingly enough, we did very specific testing in the beginning to build a very specific LUT that would replicate the 5293 film stock. I promised Todd we would stay as true to a chemical look as we possibly could. What they landed on was a combination of the Arri Alexa 65 camera, the Alexa LF, and the Mini LF. Additionally, they shot with the Arri Prime DNA lenses, which are rehoused vintage optics and produce images with a specific character. They're more gentle compared to Arri's signature primes, yet very sharp in the center. They also have a different flaring characteristic and tend to mirror the look of old anamorphic lenses in terms of subtle vignetting. If you're going to shoot a movie that looks completely at home in the 1980s, then this isn't a bad first step."
Basically, we were just like, this is not going to be a pure DNA set. This is not going to be a pure set of anything. This is going to be a Frankenstein set of lenses, old Canons, Nikors. There were some Leicas in there. Lenses that could cover the field of view of the sensor and felt like lenses of that era.
Despite the emphasis on realism, Sher took some inspiration from the look of comic books, recalling how the production designer brought a copy of the comic The Killing Joke on a location scout. "I just remember feeling that it was beautiful with really emotional, evocative imagery. So at the very least, I set out to create those kind of images." You're creating these really dynamic frames via composition, the shading, the contrast, all these things where you have a format that is different than a movie. Certainly at the beginning of the movie, I really try to think about the arc of the photography just like the arc of the character, trying to get early themes whether through lens choices, composition, and lighting, and then build the character as we transform into Joker. There certainly was a feeling of Arthur being boxed in from the beginning, making him come across as a small figure in a big world, practically invisible. The amount of headroom that Arthur's given in the frame certainly aids to shrink the man behind the myth. Every shot only goes to confirm how much the world has not been kind to Arthur. Gotham is the bully and Arthur the bullied. This builds an immense amount of empathy for the character and what he'll become.
We had conversations in which this was going to be a movie about a character, and how do we find ways to make it very intimate and very personal and connected emotionally to the character at all times. That was certainly my number one thing, was how can we constantly find ways to put the camera in a position to connect the audience to him and to feel as if we are one with him and connected to his journey in as emotional a way as possible. And how does that manifest itself in the decisions with the camera and the lighting?
Let's look at the opening of the movie when Arthur is dressed as a sign spinner, trying to entice customers into an everything must go sale. Sher chose to keep us distant from him on a long lens. He said, Witnessing him as other people see him, we've not been invited into his world yet to see him any closer. The shots from a distance are static, which allows us to be objective as if viewing him from afar. Then, as we enter his world and get to know Arthur, the lenses become wider and we get more intimate and more handheld, aligning ourselves emotionally with him. When he moves, we move. Often when he's alone, the shots are handheld, and handheld shots help to convey his emotions, unsteady and volatile. They would run scenes top to bottom and generally shoot wide to close-up. However, some scenes, they would dispense with traditional coverage and do the opposite, starting with the close-up and working their way wider. This was due to the incredibly physical nature of Joaquin's laughter and wanting to capture the strongest takes early in the close-up. Camera movement is something that Sher also uses to show the character's development, beginning with slow, meditative camera work early in the movie as we follow Arthur up the 180 stairs he's forced to climb every day. By stark contrast, the later scene, when Arthur is now Joker and is accepting of his true self, Sher uses a techno crane, giving fluidity to the move and to create energy. Backlighting him, we are low with the camera, and for perhaps the first time in his life, he feels powerful. Alongside the impeccable use of camera movement, Sher also uses light and shadow to hammer home Arthur's descent into darkness. As Arthur becomes Joker, his composition in the frame changes. His weight, his perspective, and his sense of power all serve to emphasize his newfound place in society. Joker is Arthur's shadow. He gets darker and bolder as we move along. More shadows appear throughout the film as he makes this transition. This shadow gets bigger and bigger until eventually it consumes him, hence the strong emphasis on mirrors. Joker is the reflection of Arthur. Every time he looks at himself in a mirror, it's like he sees a different version of himself that at first he's totally unconnected to and in some ways disgusted by. It's only when he has fought back, killed, and dances a transformative dance that he finally recognizes himself as Joker. He assumes a somewhat Christ-like pose, a savior unto himself in the chemical glow of the flickering light. Linking to that, a large part of the color scheme in the movie is based on sodium vapor lights, similar to the greenish-orange hue of streetlights. Lawrence Sher talks about the color in two ways. The dusk blue represents his isolated and lonely side, and the warmer light, the more hopeful side of someone seeing a different future. Even if that future's with his mom, when he's watching TV with her or bathing her in the bathtub, there's a more comforting warmth. Toward the end of the movie, he chooses that dark part of himself and we bring the warmth back. He's once again hopeful, even if it's for a nihilistic and chaotic future. In his mind, it's the future he wants to embrace. For a movie that is filled with color, the fact that the final scene is as devoid of color as possible, almost purely black and white, could not be a better reflection of the extremes that exist today. Extremes that director Todd Phillips and cinematographer Lawrence Sher brought to the character of Joker and to the city of Gotham to reflect our society as a whole. Thanks for tuning in to the Hurlbut Academy Look of Joker. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up and let us know in the comments what film we should do the next look of. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you never miss another cinematography breakdown.